Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. Governor Gavin Newsom declares a state of emergency in California amid the bird flu outbreak. We've all heard about the bird flu year after year recently. They're blaming it on the price of eggs being so expensive, poultry being expensive, shortages, and of course it's really all about getting that CRISPR into the chickens, who will then pass that on to anyone that consumes the chicken, which means they want to pass laws that mean if you own a chicken, whether you're selling a chicken, whether you're farming your own chickens for consumption or for eggs, that you're going to be mandated to get a certain shot inside of those chickens so that those chickens can then spread the CRISPR from the egg or the chicken itself to the human being. And that's what this is really about. I've talked about it for a few years now, but keep in mind what they do when they declare these state of emergencies and why everybody should pay attention, because the more they do this, the more we get desensitized to it. And the more we get desensitized to it, the more it becomes the new normal for every couple months, the government to declare states of emergency over things like a bird flu. What's next? You're going to declare a state of emergency over this common cough or a sneeze? Probably. Because what this is really about when they do that is continuing to give the government the right to overreach. And don't forget, in California, most people don't even know this. This is how insane life is in California. They actually lifted their isolation mandates for that outbreak that occurred in 2020 in January of 2024. So people don't even realize that they just recently in 2024 lifted the isolation rules that they had in place, and now they declare another state of emergency. And it's worth paying attention to, because you have to watch the narratives in all the affiliate markets. Because when we look at the news, we have to watch the scripts, right? They send the same scripts to all these affiliate news stations. So Michigan, Alabama, Galveston County in Texas are all starting to once again discuss bird flu outbreaks. And if you read between the fine lines, what they're saying in these articles, listen closely. Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency in response to the bird flu on Wednesday. The declaration comes following the spread of avian influenza in 16 states, including California. The declaration, according to Newsom's office, is meant to streamline the state's response to bird flu. The latest action from the governor comes as cases were detected in dairy cows on farms in Southern California. This is the important thing to listen to here. This signals the need to further expand monitoring and build on the coordinated statewide approach to contain and mitigate the spread of the virus. This according to the statement from the governor's office. What's the key word in that paragraph? The key word is monitoring. Monitoring. Mitigate and monitor. Statewide approach to mitigate the spread of the virus, which can only be done through monitoring. They want to monitor every chicken that can be located within the state. And like I said, they're going to make mandates because they've already, I covered this in separate videos, they're already making and they already have developed their own, you know what, let's call it a jab for the chickens, for the avian flu, which is CRISPR. Now they need to start getting it in the chickens because they know that they're not going to be able to get this in human beings. They know that most human beings will say, well, I'm not going to take one. If it's for a bird flu, I can fight off a human flu. So why would I be afraid of the bird flu? And they'll say, oh, okay, well, can we put it in your chicken? And then people with common sense will say, well, can it be transmissible from the chicken to me? And they'd say, absolutely not. That's crazy. That science doesn't exist. Just like they told mothers who were breastfeeding that it couldn't be transmissible from the mother to the infant when they were breastfeeding. And of course, that was a lie, like everything else that comes out of their mouths. So yes, it'll be transmissible, but they need to monitor. Remember when they were trying to get everyone to download apps so they can monitor social distancing and all this stuff? Well, that's what's coming again. Now, the state of emergency, which is a declaration by the government, allows them to implement policies that are typically not permitted in order to protect its citizens, which means that they can do whatever they want. And they could say it's in the name of, well, there's a natural disaster, so we could declare a state of emergency, and if we decide that your home is a threat to another home up the road because maybe you have a crack in your home and we just make up the fact that it's got a crack and say that it could be dangerous, your house could collapse and cause a tsunami. We can make it whatever we want. You have to listen to us. This is government overreach. This is why they declare state of emergency. They can say whatever they want in the name of natural disasters, civil unrest, armed conflict, or, of course, their favorite, medical pandemics or epidemics. And everybody out there, I warned a couple of years ago, everybody out there needed to pay attention to what states they were in. Because in certain states, specifically Democrat states, they were quietly passing bills while nobody was paying attention because everyone was so irritated with the fact that they were losing their jobs or being told they had to take this or do that or being told that men can now have babies. They were quietly passing bills like in New York. Rule 213, whenever appropriate to control the spread of a highly contagious communicable disease, the state commissioner of health can issue or direct the local health authority to issue isolation and or quarantine orders, consistent with due process of law, of course, to all such persons as the state commissioner of health sees fit to put these laws and regulations under. So this gives them the authority to force quarantine and force isolation. Now, I'm not saying that's what's coming with this avian flu, and I'll read to you the statement that Gavin Newsom released, but pay attention to where this is going because the story's been lingering for a while. And the end game of the story is not to get a human being to take a shot for a bird flu. There are, of course, they will offer it. Make no mistake about it. They will offer a shot to human beings to protect them from a bird flu. And there will be these people who have the word sucker tattooed to their forehead. You may have remember them. They're actually still walking around wearing masks who will go and get it. And that's, that's a frightening thought. But the reality is getting this into the food supply chain. And I get it. They already put these types of things in processed food. But these laws will give the government the right to come on your property. If you have a chicken farm in the back, if you have 2 chickens in your backyard that you get eggs from, the health officials have a right to come to your property. Remember that story that you heard in New York that the conservatives were pumping out there? Remember the story about Peanut the squirrel? Everybody heard about Peanut the squirrel. New York decided to go to this guy's house. It was a supposedly famous squirrel on TikTok, on social media. The guy did videos with the squirrel. The squirrel was house trained. And the government went to his home, and what did they do? They put down the squirrel. They were afraid that the squirrel might have rabies. Well, that entire story was to prepare you for what's coming with the bird flu, which will then spread to cattle, which will continue to spread and spread and spread. Where you'll hear stories about how they've declared a state of emergency on chickens, right? Then they're going to say we need to mitigate it and we need to monitor it. So then the state's going to say things like every single person who has chickens needs to get their chickens euthanized. And people say, I'm not going to get them euthanized. I don't sell them. And they'll say it doesn't matter. Because if your chicken, it's transmissible to humans. Haven't you heard the stories of the last 4 years? All of a sudden that the bird flu can go to humans and they'll say, oh, no, I haven't, or maybe I did, but I'm not afraid of it. They'll say, we don't care if you're afraid of it. You're putting your neighbor at risk. And they'll say, what? And they'll say, yeah, you're putting your neighbor at risk. So me having a chicken here might put my neighbor at risk. Yeah, your chicken might cough in the night or it might fart and it might go over to your neighbor's lawn and he might get the avian flu, the bird flu, or maybe his cat will, or his dog, or his chickens. Even though they're euthanized, they still won't be immune because no science makes sense anymore. And then they'll say, look, here's the option. Just like the option wasn't really given with Peanut the squirrel, but we're going to come to your door. I'm going to give you 2 options. You can either euthanize your chicken with our shot that we have with us in a suitcase right here, or we're going to put your chicken down. Okay? Those will be your 2 options. And you won't have any other option. You'll say, this is against my rights. This is against the law. And they'll say, no, it's not, because we're in a state of emergency. And by the way, if you haven't heard, you don't even need to be in a state of emergency anymore, based on a lot of the laws that we've passed quietly behind everybody's back, which gives the health organizations the right to come to your property and do this. And then all of a sudden, the chicken that you're eating or the eggs you're consuming now have CRISPR in it because they're transmissible. It's transmissible. It's proven. That's real science. They'll deny it. So let's take a closer look at the statement that was released. And of course, we can expect this, like I said, remember, to be the new normal. They could be minor things like this, where they say, look, we're not going to lock you down. So everybody goes, oh, okay. They're not going to lock us up. Oh, okay. We're just coming for your chicken. We just want to get your chicken. Then we want to get your cow. Then we want to get your garden, any of your vegetables, all of it. We want to stick it in there so that you're not eating anything organically grown or anything that we don't get our hands on. You see how it works? And people will just go, all right, well, it's better than what we went through in 2020. right? At least they're not doing that to us because they can't think, like I say, further than they can spit. So they don't know what the government's really trying to do with this nanotech. So, proclamation of a state of emergency from the state of California. Whereas avian influenza, commonly known as bird flu, is widespread in wild birds worldwide, including the United States. And whereas bird flu was first detected in the United States in the wild bird population of South Carolina in January 2022, in the domestic poultry population in Indiana in February 2022, and the wild bird population in California in July of 2022. Whereas bird flu primarily infects birds, but can also infect mammals, including humans all of a sudden. How convenient. Whereas on March 25th, 2024, an outbreak of the bird flu infection in dairy cows was first reported in other states. And whereas since March 25th, 2024, there have been 61 total reported confirmed cases of bird flu infection in humans across 8 states, including 34 reported cases in California, with no documented instances of human-to-human transmission to date. And whereas on August 30th, 2024, bird flu infection was confirmed in a dairy cow in Central California, with the California Department of Public Health activating its Medical Health Coordination Center for the same day to respond to the emergent situation. And whereas California has led the nation in milk production since 1993, accounting for 18% of the U.S. milk production in 2022 across more than 1,100 dairies statewide. And whereas between August 30th, 2024 and early December 2024, 641 dairies have confirmed positive tests for bird flu across 9 California counties limited to Central California. And whereas, in response to the introduction of the bird flu into California dairy cattle in August 2024, the state of California has mobilized a comprehensive on-scene response to bird flu in dairy cattle and poultry farms across the state to minimize farm workers' exposure, reduce raw dairy product contamination, and contain the virus. And whereas, which by the way, let me just point out the fact that raw milk will be illegal likely moving forward. Don't forget who has the patent on pasteurized milk, one of the patents of the Rothschild regime, the Rothschild family. You know, the same Rothschild at the top of the pyramid. One of their patents is on pasteurized milk because they don't want you to have raw milk. They want you to think it's bad for you. And they want to ban it. And this is one of the ways they'll be able to by saying how dangerous raw milk is. So, whereas the California Department of Food and Agriculture is running a comprehensive testing and quarantine program statewide with 985 dairies currently under surveillance testing statewide and 614 dairies under quarantine. And whereas thousands of bird flu tests are being completed each week that reflect the disease status of millions of animals, including testing every negative dairy in the state weekly and all poultry in disease control zones at least twice a week. Weekly testing for dairy subject to quarantine to establish they are free from disease before releasing quarantine. Testing in order to obtain movement permits for dairies and poultry farms, and additional testing at dairies and poultry farms for research. Okay, so do you not understand? If you don't, let me just explain it. These animals are going to be not just tagged, they're going to be tagged, monitored, and tracked wherever they go. I covered this with Montana. There's a lot of states out there that would surprise you where they have to have these, literally have to have their cows microchipped. They have to have their cows completely under surveillance and monitored at all times. And this is going to come to you and your personal farm, whatever you might have, your local farm. Let's just say that if you don't have your own farm, maybe a farm you go to get your milk, to get your eggs. They're going to put all of the animals under surveillance. And of course, well, what's it going to lead to? Well, it's going to lead towards all the animals getting a shot. And most human beings won't care because most human beings just want to make sure that they don't get their buttons pushed again because we allowed it, of course, a couple of years ago by our own government. So not that many people have farms. You heard the numbers, 600, 900. The common person will not care. The common person has no idea about CRISPR. They have no idea that this stuff can be passed via eating it and consuming it, and they want to make sure they get to all of it. And that's the goal of this. And don't forget, even in that last paragraph, right? Subject to quarantine, okay? Might be talking about animal quarantining, right? But they're also talking about containing and expanding monitoring. We're talking digital IDs because we're talking about who's around these cows. Who are the workers who are on these farms near the cows? What if they go from farm A to farm Z? How are we going to monitor and track them? Maybe they're a carrier. And it continues like a domino falling one after the other, after the other, after the other. And the government continues to allow it because the government is doing it by design. We have digital ID in place and we have CRISPR getting into our food supply chain, which some people already believe it is. And I'm not saying that it's not, depending on what you eat. What I'm saying is that they're going to make it mandated. Because if you think you're escaping because you're going, oh, well, those people are eating McDonald's, so they get what they deserve. I farm in my backyard. I do this and I do that. Maybe you don't have chickens. Maybe you're a vegan, right? Well, guess what? Eventually they're going to come because they'll just make up more stuff. And they're going to want to inject this into your tomatoes and your lettuce. And it doesn't mean that they don't already do it from the sky. But what if you have something covering your little farm in the backyard so it doesn't get polluted by the aluminum and barium getting dumped on it? Well, they'll make sure they get to it because it's got to get in everybody, and they're going to continue to figure out a way to do it. So California, state of emergency over the bird flu, but pay attention to the narratives because everyone's going to jump and they're going to say, no, I'm going to try to keep Trump out of power, right? That's the alt-right media, doesn't have a clue. Then they're going to start saying stuff about themselves, saying they're going to lock us up again. They want the food supply. Pay attention to CRISPR. Pay attention to how it works. That's what this is about. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.